Hello, welcome back. This is the part 2 of the first week of Module 1. The Module 1 is Accreditation, Professional and Regulatory Organizations, and this is actually going to focus on accreditation. There should only be one part to this lecture, but if I go along, it might peek into a second piece. So let's talk about this. There are numerous initiatives that are underway to improve the quality and safety domains in healthcare. The Joint Commission has come up with some very strong recommendations to standardize or omit abbreviations altogether, to standardize handoff communications such as shift reports, such as passing information from a nurse to a physician, and etc. And these are all aimed at improving communications and decreasing opportunities for error. Now, the omission overall of abbreviations strikes me as being very valuable because there are a lot of ambiguous abbreviations out there, not to mention the fact that hospitals and other healthcare providers overall are going to electronic health records, so something like a C with a bar on top of it, which to us means with, doesn't mean anything to a computer, and it's really hard to program it with hotkeys and things like that, so you actually have to type with anyway. Why not get rid of that abbreviation? Additionally, there's legislation such as the Patient Safety and Quality Improvement Act of 2005 and the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, health reform, which aim to improve the sharing of malpractice and adverse events information. Now, this information is ordinarily considered to be privileged information, which is collected by risk managers and counsel in a hospital or other healthcare facility to protect that facility and protect that provider from malpractice or other risks. This information could now be shared under certain circumstances, collected under certain ways, with other providers for the purposes of improving the likelihood that a systematic error will be caught and corrected, or identifying, in some cases, just bad providers, which really the focus should be on systematic error and take it off blame. But frankly, there are some bad providers out there that might need to be caught as well. Now, many state and municipal legislatures have also passed laws or are considering similar proposals that would incorporate the availability of this information from providers and hospitals so that they could improve quality and patient safety information availability. The circumstances under which this information could be shared is very specific. It includes peer review, quality boards, and similar panels only. The information has to be collected for the purpose of being used in this peer review. It can't be collected for another purpose and then moved to peer review. If it is, then it's still available for discovery by counsel in the case of a malpractice suit or other tort. Now, this type of information sharing is aimed at helping to remove some of the stigma associated with error, which makes safety and error reduction more of a cultural norm. So right now, if you make a mistake on the nursing unit, or if you make a mistake while taking care of a patient, if you're a nurse practitioner, that mistake is something that risk managers want to hide, you probably want to hide, the hospital or other organization for which you work wants to hide, because it opens them up to the possibility of tort. Alternatively, if you have a peer review process that helps to identify these errors, that's beneficial. Risk managers today will actually collect information about a risk that came up. For instance, a patient was given 1 gram of morphine as opposed to 1 milligram of morphine. Really extreme case, I know. But anyway, it gives you the idea that there might be something wrong with the way the documents are written, so that maybe it looks like it's written as 1 gram instead of 1 milligram. If that happens, a patient dies, they collect all this information, they store it in a file, lawsuit happens, the file gets put away, that's it never gets looked at again. With this kind of a peer review program, that would actually become part and parcel of the peer review process, and make it possible for, if something else like it happens again, they could actually pull these data together and say, hey, wait a minute, this looks just like what happened in 2009, and learn more from it, as opposed to how they collect the data now. Now, the purpose of the limitations that are being placed on these peer-reviewed data is to prevent sharing of potentially incriminating evidence and limit the exposure to legal liability and torts. So now, quality and safety peer review is becoming an important aspect of physician credentialing and privileging processes. The Joint Commission now requires that hospitals collect a lot more data from physicians and nurse practitioners and other direct care providers that are requesting privileges, and then they're being required to monitor these credentialed providers' competencies thereafter. How it used to be was a provider would be given privileges, and a lot of facilities never followed up on those privileges after that provider got it. The Joint Commission is now saying if you've given privileges to a provider, that provider doesn't remain privileged for the rest of his life, and you have to follow up. And there is very specific information that they have to fill out. Now, the old process, one of the reasons that it probably took so long, or they maintained it forever, was a very burdensome process. You had dozens or even hundreds of pages of documents that had to be filled out. Some of them were appropriate to that provider, some weren't. For instance, a neurologist might find that he's got 6 pages of documents to fill out that are really more appropriate to a family care provider, a family practitioner. Additionally, the other way around might go. So to decrease this burden for managing the credentialing process, the Joint Commission is now requiring standardization of the process that bundles similar providers, such as gynecologists, under a common umbrella. This allows the credentialing body to keep necessary information on file, but requires providers to present only the evidence specific to their expertise. This standardized approach carries through to the monitoring of triggers for risk review. So what has to happen before a risk review is pulled up and this provider has to come back into credentialing again. Adverse events reporting, frequency of malpractice claims, and also involvement in sentinel events. Now, quickly, the sentinel event is defined by the Joint Commission as an unexpected occurrence involving death or serious physical or psychological injury or risk thereof. Serious injuries specifically include loss of limb or function. The phrase "or the risk thereof" includes any process variation for which a recurrence would carry a significant chance of a serious adverse outcome. Such events are called sentinel because they signal the need for an immediate investigation and response. One important aspect of credentialing is also to limit the organization's liability while also limiting the potential for harm to the healthcare consumer. Now, organizations providing healthcare must ensure that the providers are qualified and remain qualified to provide care, as I said. Failure to ensure or monitor qualifications in the credentialing process could lead to elevated liability risk. Under some circumstances, the peer review of quality and safety documents that are collected to monitor these events without stigma could be used to show that a robust system was put together to make sure that the physician remained credentialed. These documents, however, are a last line of defense against torts because the idea is to keep them out of discovery. Maintaining excellent medical records and tracking risk in those records is really paramount. And later in the course, we're going to talk about how electronic records can facilitate risk tracking. An organization's ability to manage credentialing and privileging of its medical staff effectively is an important aspect of what is perceived as quality. I am going to have to go on to a second lecture set, and please excuse me for a minute.